Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're new here, do consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. Okay, so now today I'm going to be showing you how to create a simple logo animation, something like this. Okay, so maybe you just want to animate your own logo, or a client has requested a dynamic logo sting at the end of their product video or whatever video that you've just completed for them. And what I do for this personally is add this as an additional extra. So if they want an animated logo, then that will be reflected in the invoice as well. A lot of the times the client is unaware that this is a possibility, so make them know that it is possible and they can have it if you want it, or if they want it. So the first thing we're going to do is import this file into Photoshop. Now, if your logo has a transparent background already and it's a PNG file, then you're already winning. If not, then you're going to have to make that background transparent, and I'm going to show you how we can quickly achieve this. One quick way you can do this is to select all the elements of the logo that you want by using the magic wand tool. So we'll just tap on each element that I'm going to be using for this logo. So we're going to add to that selection by holding down Shift and clicking on each element as required. And what I'm going to do is then inverse that selection, come over to the layer, make sure it's unlocked, hit the backspace button, deselect that, and now we have our transparent background. Right, so this is the stage where we are preparing the logo for animation. So we want to separate all of these elements that we want to act independently. So what I'm going to use is the lasso tool, and I'm just going to select my first element, layer via copy, and as you can see, it's created a new layer over here with just that element in it. I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these ones. So I'm going to just speed this up and I'll see you when I'm done. Okay, so now we have each element on its own layer here, and what I'm going to do is just rename them to make life easier going forward. Now you can name these whatever you want to name them, as long as they make sense to you. Okay, so once you've done that, you're going to come over here to File, Export, Layers to Files. You're going to choose your output destination. Make sure that it's set to PNG, your transparency is ticked, and most importantly, this trim layers here is unchecked. You're going to run that, and your files are going to download at the destination in a couple of seconds. So now we're going to jump over to Premiere Pro, create a new project, import the files, and continue the process. So now we're going to drag these onto the timeline, and we're going to stack them on top of each other like this. There we have all the elements for that particular logo. So what I'm going to do is add a lighter background to this so it's easier for me to work on, because the colors in this particular logo are dark. So what I'm going to do is add a color matte to create that background. Hit OK, and you choose the color that you want. I'm just going to choose a white color. You can name that white background. I'm just going to drag it onto the timeline. And there we have that. So it's easier for me to work on it like this. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is set the duration of this. So I want this to last around 3 seconds. I want the animation to last for about 3 seconds. So I'm going to go to the 3-second mark, set my out point, and I'm just going to zoom in on this timeline so we can see what we're doing. Then I'm going to extend all of my files to the end of the workspace like so. And we can now begin setting our keyframes to animate this logo. So at this point, you have total flexibility and total creative freedom to do what you want to do with this particular logo. I'm going to be using simple scale and position keyframes to animate this logo. So when I'm doing keyframing, I like to start at the end point or near the end. So I'm going to bring the playhead all the way across here, and I'm going to set my first keyframe. So I have my layer selected, I go to the effect controls, and I want to move or change the position of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and hit on the stopwatch. That's going to create your first keyframe, and that is my end keyframe. So what I want to do is slide this element from the right hand side and slide it into position here. So I'm going to come back a few frames, and don't worry about if you don't get the timing right at this point. You can always edit that later on for speed and positioning. You can also check the relationships of your keyframe within this window, so you can see this is where my keyframe is. You can also use these buttons to go exactly to the keyframe. So I'm going to come a few frames back and I'm going to set another keyframe just by moving the positioning. And if we look at where that top left element, it is now moving across the screen to the right hand side, and that's where I want it to start from. So I'm going to drop that there, and it's created a whole new keyframe for that already. So by just moving the playhead across the timeline, we can see we have already created our first animation. So I would like the bottom left element to do exactly the same thing or move the same way at the same time as the top one. So I'm going to select the bottom left layer, and I'm going to create those same keyframes in the exact places as I did on the top one. So an easy way to do this is to copy and paste keyframes. So I'm going to go to the first keyframe for the top left layer. I'm going to drag across this, Command C to copy. I'm going to come down to the bottom left and make sure that we have this window selected. We're going to paste that right in there. So as you can see, both of these are now moving in sync at the same time without having to create new keyframes and shift them about yourself. So the next thing I'm going to do is flip this shape horizontally. So an easy way to do that, I'm going to come here onto that layer and I'm going to just use the razor tool to cut it. So what I'm going to do is flip the first part of it. So we have that part selected, and we come over to your effects and search for horizontal flip. Add the horizontal flip to that, and we can see it's flipped there. So once we get into the next portion, it's going to flip flop, and you can adjust when that happens by just moving these and shifting these two parts of this particular image left and right accordingly. The next thing we're going to do is move on to the top right element. Now I'm going to want that to behave as the first two elements that we've animated. So these two on the left, I want it to move within that same timing and stop when those two stop. So I'm going to go to where they stopped. I'm going to create my first keyframe, my positioning keyframe, and then I'm going to come back to where these ones start, and then I'm going to shift that to the left, and we're going to bring that in just about there. So let's just play that back, and this is what we have so far. Boom, boom, boom. Looking good so far. So let's animate this green triangle here. I'm going to come to the end of the animation. I'm going to create the first keyframe, which is a scale keyframe in this instance. And then I'm going to go a couple of frames back, and I'm going to reduce that to 0. And so this is going to grow in just like so. All right, so that's looking good, but I do want to change the way that this triangle grows. I'm just going to make a minor adjustment. I'm going to select motion, so it's going to show me where my center point is, and I'm going to move that center point right to the top of this triangle so that it will grow from that point. So if we look at the way it grows here, it grows in that fashion. And let me just show you the difference between the two, what difference that had. So moving that to the top, it grows like this. If I were to move this center point back to where it was originally, it grows from the left to the right. It doesn't start at any particular point on that shape, which is what we want it to do. So that looks a lot better anyway. So essentially, that is our animation completed. So what you'd want to do now is just nail down the details in this. Go back and fine tune and polish up. Make sure that your timings are correct and where you want them to be. Add some easy ease attributes to the keyframe so everything flows a little bit smoother. And what I've done to mine, guys, is I've added a little extra seasoning, a little extra spice by introducing a play button as well as a cursor. So it would appear that when the cursor hits the play button with this sound effect, it just sets the animation into motion like so. Okay, so that is it, guys. That is how you can create a simple animated logo. So there's technically 2 steps to this. The first one is setting up the logo for animation and getting those transparent backgrounds for your logo or your graphic artwork. And the second thing is using keyframes in Premiere Pro to then animate your logo. Okay guys, so that is it for this one. Now, if you found this video useful, do tap that like button and leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.